Why do so many highly capable women unintentionally make themselves smaller in moments that matter most? More specifically, why do women with exceptional knowledge, experience, and leadership capability sometimes begin to overexplain, soften their opinions, hesitate to speak, or differ to others in executive facing environments? Traditional explanations often attribute these behaviors to confidence, personality, or communication style. While these factors certainly influence behavior, psychology and neuroscience suggest they may not be where the process begins. This raises a different question. What internal processes influence whether someone naturally expands into leadership or instinctively shrinks under pressure? And welcome to the science of shrinking, why highly capable women make themselves smaller in high stakes environments. My name is Amir, and I'm the founder of the Confidence Frequency. I help high performing women in technology delivery position themselves to become the obvious choice for six-figure executive facing leadership opportunities through three foundational pillars: nervous system regulation, belief recoding, and identity recalibration. Because qualifications may get you considered, but the way you think, communicate, and lead often determines whether you're selected. Today's presentation explores one of the internal mechanisms that influences those outcomes. So, by the end of this presentation, you'll understand why shrinking is rarely a conscious decision. You'll also learn how the brain nervous system how we'll learn how the brain nervous system and deeply held beliefs can influence communication, visibility, and decision making, and leadership behavior under pressure. More importantly, you'll begin to understand why shrinking is often an adaptive response rather than a reflection of your true capacity and capability. So, many professionals believe shrinking is a confidence problem. The assumption is that people simply need to become more assertive. What does that look like? Maybe you need to speak louder, be more confident, take up more space. Now, these suggestions can certainly be helpful. However, they often assume that shrinking begins with behavior. Research suggests something different. Behavior is often the visible expression of a deeper biological and psychological process or processes. Before someone decides whether to speak up, challenge an idea, negotiate compensation, or present with conviction, multiple internal systems are already evaluating the situation. These evaluations influence whether the individual naturally expands into leadership or instinctively begins protecting themselves. So, understanding these internal processes provides a very different framework for understanding confidence, executive presence, and professional visibility. Rather than asking, how do I stop shrinking? We might first ask, what causes shrinking in the first place? So, exploring the polyvagal theory. Hmm. So, exploring the polyvagal theory. So, Stephen Purge's polyvagal theory suggests that the nervous system is constantly evaluating cues of safety and threat. This process occurs automatically and often outside of conscious awareness. When the nervous system perceives sufficient safety, individuals generally have greater access to curiosity, connection, flexible thinking, and confident communication. Now, when sufficient safety is absent, protective behaviors become more likely. These behaviors include withdrawing, becoming quieter, avoiding disagreement, over explaining, and minimizing visibility or hiding. From this perspective, shrinking is not necessarily a lack of confidence. It may be the nervous system attempting to preserve safety. Now, let's look at a different research perspective, the self silencing theory. So, psychologist Crowley Jack introduced the concept of self silencing, describing how individuals may suppress their own thoughts, opinions, or needs to preserve relationships, avoid conflict, or maintain acceptance. Rather than expressing themselves authentically, they begin filtering their communication based on anticipated reactions from others. In professional environments, self-silencing can appear in many ways, such as hesitating to share ideas, overqualifying opinions, avoiding disagreement, deferring expertise, and seeking permission before contributing. These behaviors are often interpreted as communication problems. Psycho- psy- Psychological research suggests they may instead represent adaptive strategies developed to reduce interpersonal risk. Now, exploring the work of Albert Bandura. So, psychologist Albert Bandura's work on self advocacy demonstrates that people's beliefs about their ability to influence outcomes significantly affect how they behave. When individuals believe their perspective matters, they are more likely to contribute, influence discussions, and remain engaged during challenges. When repeated experiences teach someone that speaking up leads to criticism, rejection, or dismissal, they may begin participating less. Not because they have less to offer, but because they expect different outcomes. Over time, these expectations shape behavior, which leads us to the scenario of why two women can show up so differently. So imagine two women entering the same executive meeting. Both possess comparable education, so they have the same level of education. They have the same level of technical expertise, leadership experience, and preparation. However, one naturally contributes ideas, challenges assumptions, communicates concisely, and trusts her perspective, while the other begins second guessing herself, adding unnecessary explanations, waiting for permission, and minimizing her contributions. Now, traditional leadership development might conclude that one woman is simply more confident. Behavioral science suggests another possibility. They may be operating from different internal systems. One's internal systems support expansion, while the other prioritizes protection. So, what that looks like is with protection, she's second guessing herself, over explaining, and waiting for permission. With expansion, she naturally contributes, challenges, and trusts her voice. So, what we see here, it's not a confidence gap because they have the same level of education, they have the same level of technical expertise, the same level of leadership experience, and the same level of preparation. So, in essence, if we look at confidence, confidence is basically your level of belief when it comes to your competence. So, if you are skilled with all of these different things, you have the confidence. The confidence is just masked by the way that you are filtering your reality. One is filtering for protection, the other one is filtering for expansion. So the system in which you're leveraging makes the difference, either protection or expansion. This leads us to the confidence frequency perspective. So, this is where the confidence frequency expands the conversation. So, most professional development teaches women to appear more confident. You speak differently, stand differently, communicate like an executive, right? While these behaviors certainly matter, they begin at the level of performance. So, these are surface level. Our work begins much earlier. We help women understand and transform the internal systems influencing those behaviors through three different pillars. The first pillar being nervous system regulation. So, through regulating your nervous system, you move your system from protection default to expansion, belief recoding, which means that you're rewriting what feels risky to say, and you're basically rewriting your ability to show up differently. And then identity recalibration, which is your self concept, so that you stop shrinking and you start expanding in rooms where the opportunities are available to you in order for you to be seen as that obvious choice, that obvious leader that executives need, know, and trust. So, our goal is not to teach women how to perform confidence. Our goal is to create the internal conditions where shrinking is no longer the nervous system's default response. Because when internal safety increases, authentic leadership becomes more accessible. Now, let's look at the key takeaways. So, in today's presentation, we explore one fundamental question: what causes shrinking? The research suggests several important conclusions. Shrinking is often an adaptive response. The nervous system continuously evaluates safety, and which means that your nervous system is consistently scanning to see if an environment is safe or a threat. If it is safe, then you expand. If it is a threat, then you shrink. Also, our learned beliefs influence professional behavior. Expectations shape participation, and leadership behavior is often the visible expression of deeper internal systems at play. Understanding these principles changes how we think about confidence. Rather than asking how to force ourselves to appear bigger, we begin asking what internal systems are making shrinking feel necessary. So, as a closing reflection, today's presentation explored the science behind shrinking. If you've ever left a meeting wishing you had spoken up, if you've ever softened your expertise, if you've ever made yourself smaller despite knowing you were capable, it may not be because you lack confidence. It may be because your internal systems have learned that shrinking feels safer than expansion. At the Confidence Frequency, we help high performing women in technology delivery transform those internal systems through nervous system regulation, belief recoding, and identity recalibration. Because our goal isn't simply to help you take up more space, it's to help you become the kind of leader who no longer feels the need to shrink in the first place. If you're ready to position yourself to become the obvious choice for 150K plus executive facing leadership opportunities, I invite you to apply for a confidence frequency strategy session. You can find the link to apply below in the description or in my bio.